City of LA. I know in being in the city of LA, I understand spiritual warfare. I understand that this world in which we live in, and the city and the dwelling and everything that we go by in everyday living, that we see, that we tangibly touch, is just temporary. There's another realm that we don't see with our natural eyes that's going on. And that's the realm that has an effect on our spirit, has an effect on our way of life and way of living. And so in 2017, it was a little trying for me and my family in being there in LA. Been in there, I think, going on the 4th year or 5th year in LA. And for many, that would be an achievement. For many have went to LA and left within a year or 2 years, if at the most 3 years. And without establishing anything, they would just fold up and leave. And so for us, it was a lot of soul searching and gut wrenching and all these other things that would come over us. And our faith was tried more and more each night, each day that we went on. And thinking that our hopes were high and our faith was high, that God was going to intervene and do something because, you know, by the way, God gave us a word, and God gave us through His word here and audible words that He was going to do what He was going to do in the city of LA. And so we found ourselves assured and strengthened in the Lord those coming years when we first got there, that God was going to do what He was going to do. And then all of a sudden, after a year went by, and the 2nd year went by, and the 3rd year went by, God began to test us and to test the measure of our faith and having us to go through some things that normally you wouldn't, I guess, be asked of God to do. But for us, it was a little bit different, you know. For us, it was, you know, asking us to do something that was outside of the realm of our comfort zone. And so, in our obedience to God, we did it. We stepped out in faith, and we believed that God was going to be assured, and we were going to be assured that God was going to take care of us. Everything was going to be all right. God was going to bless. God was going to provide what He needed to provide. But after time went on, nothing happened. And nothing transpired that we thought God was going to do. And so the minds that we have as humans began to be wrapped around the idea that God was going to do something. We didn't know what it was, but we just believed and trusted that God was going to do something in that place. And without really giving it much thought, we went through everyday living and went to work and didn't go to work and all these other things that happened. And before you knew it, this last year came upon us, and we were thinking and reflecting back. And as I was reflecting back towards the end of the year, I was like, a lot of has gone on in our lives, and we still are here. And as I began to ponder that, my attitude began to bubble up with a little bit of boldness and some sassiness to it and some obnoxiousness in me. A little bit of my human spirit began to rise up in me. And God began to remind me, for I was fortunate to go and visit Brother Pastor Davis in Idaho over the winter, towards the beginning of the winter time. And I didn't feel at all spiritual when he asked me, hey, come on over, I want you to preach a revival for us. How everything happened, just you knew it was God that was doing it. And as it got closer, I remember struggling within myself, saying, you know what, I don't really feel like this is, you know, I'm up for this. I don't really feel like I've done anything to get to where I'm at right now. And as I began to have those feelings, God was working on me and saying, hey, didn't I just talk to you about being obedient to me? And then all these lessons that He had given unto me in these last 4 to 5 years, being there in LA, all of a sudden came to me and began to play in my mind and in my spirit. And all I can remember having a conversation with God, saying, you know what, all right, yeah, good. You know, those conversations that we have with God. And When God's starting to talk to us and we just say, yeah, okay. You don't got the goosebumps, you don't got nothing, but you just know God's talking to you, and you know you're in the like, all right. Okay, you're God, yeah, all right. What? God, you're going to do it. Yeah, right. You know, you almost have the attitude like, whatever, God, you're going to do it. All right, let's do it. And as he began to work on me, and as I get closer to the Idaho, I was almost thinking, man, I'm not going to go. I'm going to just tell him that I can't go because, you know, work. And it was, at one time, it was that work. I didn't know if I was going to get the days off. And I had just gotten started at my new job, and I didn't know anything. And so I didn't even pray about it. I was like, well, God, if it's your will, it's going to happen. If not, you know. I was in that mode already of like, you know, hey, you're teaching me, God, something here, right? So I'm not going to pray about this. If it's your will, it's going to happen. God, you know it's going to work itself out. I'm not going to worry about it. And so as it got closer and it got closer, and Brother Davis was asking me, hey, you got those days? What's going on? I was like, you know, I gotta do the right thing here, you know. I gotta call. I gotta look at my job. I know I just started. I only get 3 days off. I don't know if that's going to be enough. He wants me to stay there for a week and a half. I don't know. And so I looked in at work, and all of a sudden, look, I had 21 days of vacation time. Just starting off at work. And I'm like, wow, you never hear that. I mean, it took me 10 years at Rite Aid and barely got enough for 3 weeks. 21 days. And here I am working less than a year, and I get 21 days. And so I'm like, all right. So I got the days off. So I put it in, and I got approved for it. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm on my way to Idaho. And so I get to Idaho with Brother Davis, and all of a sudden, we just clicked. It was like, wow, this, you know, I've been just going off of my father-in-law and my mother-in-law because they went to that church. And so here I am, you know, I'm just going off my relationship with God. I haven't been praying or fasting or doing all this other things, and God's teaching me something else. And so I'm like, okay, so whatever you're going to do, God, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's just where I was at. And so I was like, all right, well, what are you going to do, God? And so as we got to the first service, I had no idea. And you know, didn't have any notes or anything. I still don't preach with any notes. So I went, and I got there, and I'm like, all right, what is God going to do, right? So I get behind the pulpit, and I preach about what God has been dealing with me in a sense, because he's been showing me something regarding grace. And so I preach grace and everything, and all of a sudden the power of God falls, and everything happens, and I'm like, whoa, this is pretty cool. This is pretty awesome. But if I would have looked back and reflect back up until that time, it was like, who's this guy? He's been in LA for four or 5 years. And he's been struggling to try to make it as building a church. And where's this congregation? And how come this and how come that? And all we were going off was our word from the Lord that told us to go. All we were going off was the dreams that we had and the visions that we had for the city of LA. All we were going off of was being obedient unto God and going forth and in the direction that God wanted us to go. And everything through the times that we started, God would always show up at the right time, at the right moment to show forth that, hey, I'm validating and I'm letting you know that you're supposed to be here and everything's going to be all right. And so now, you know, we were there, and so there I am in Idaho, and nothing has transpired over there until then. And then God starts to show me and starts to help me to understand about his grace. And in that sense, that's a whole other message in itself regarding grace. And I thought I knew what grace was, and God started to deal with me regarding grace even more so. And so I was there preaching and everything, and just a long story short, the bottom line was my grace is sufficient. Mm-hmm. So after everything in that, I was like, man, now I understand when Paul said that all that has transpired was because of the grace of God that was on me. All my past and all my failures and all that has transpired up until this point. But I thank God for the grace of God that allowed me to be where I'm at right now. And where I'm going, God helped me to understand That where I'm going, it's based on the grace of God that He's proportioned to me to fulfill that which He's called me to. So I want you to understand something as body of believers in Blythe, California, that God has a purpose and a plan for everybody's life. It may not have the thrills and everything that goes along with it, and the candles and the birthday cakes and the balloons and the hip hop and all that other stuff that goes along with it. But rest assured that God has a plan and a purpose for every individual.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter where you live. In the sense that you will merit anything, but God's grace is sufficient for where you're at. Now, a little side note regarding that. God positions you where He needs you. So that He can demonstrate His grace.